Picture Ronda Rousey strolling out of a cozy LA café, savoring a rare moment of peace, until two cocky cops turn her day upside down, lifting her skirt for a cheap laugh. What starts as a crude prank spirals into a jaw-dropping showdown when Ronda, the UFC legend, unleashes a force they never saw coming. In seconds, their smug grins fade, and a city watches in awe. This is a tale of strength reclaimed, a reckoning on the streets, and a twist that'll leave you cheering. Subscribe and post in the comments where are you watching from. Ronda Rousey stepped out of the modest yet charming Café Bean Brew in downtown Los Angeles, her mind still lingering on the warmth of a late breakfast and the rare, quiet peace of the morning. Despite the everyday simplicity of her attire, a plain t-shirt paired with a modest skirt, there was an undeniable strength about her. Known to many as a formidable UFC fighter, Ronda had learned early in life that appearances could be deceiving. Behind her unassuming look burned the spirit of a warrior. The city around her was a living tapestry of urban sounds and scents. The rich, nutty aroma of freshly brewed coffee still lingered in the air from the cafe, melding with the unmistakable tang of motor oil and the gentle perfume of sun-warmed pavement. Overhead, the afternoon sun cast elongated shadows on the busy street, while the hum of traffic provided a constant, almost hypnotic backdrop. Palm trees lining the boulevard swayed lazily in the warm, welcoming breeze, their fronds softly rustling like whispered secrets. The distant chatter of passers-by blended with the urban symphony. People exchanged glances, some recognizing Ronda's unmistakable presence. Yet none dared break the invisible code of silence reserved for celebrities in their rare moments of casual reprieve. As Ronda walked along the sunlit sidewalk, her thoughts drifted momentarily to the balance between the ferocity of her fighting career and the serenity of these few untroubled hours. Her steps, light yet purposeful, echoed against the pavement in a rhythmic cadence, the gentle pitter-patter of sneakers resonating in harmony with the city's heartbeat. But amidst the gentle ambience, an unwelcome disruption was brewing. Not far from a parked patrol car at the edge of the crowded sidewalk, two figures in uniform lounged with an air of misplaced entitlement. Officer Troy Becker and Officer Logan Shaw, their expressions a crude mixture of drunken bravado and self-satisfied amusement, watched Ronda's approach with predatory eyes. Their coarse laughter and lewd whispers cut sharply through the gentle hum of the city. In a moment that shattered the fragile illusion of peace, Officer Becker called out with a leering tone, "Hey, beauty, show us your legs." His voice, carrying across the pavement, was both vulgar and brazen. Before Ronda could even register the shock of the words, Becker's gloved hand darted out, seizing a portion of her skirt in a crude attempt to expose her legs. At that very instant, Officer Shaw burst into raucous laughter, his chuckles mingling with the unsettling sounds of nearby engines idling. The act was not merely a joke. It was a blatant assault on her dignity, a reckless display of authority and disrespect combined with a twisted sense of humor. A hush fell over the small group of onlookers. Passers-by halted mid-stride. A few phones were hastily raised to capture the unfolding debacle. Their whispers turned into a collective murmur, a mixture of shock and outrage that rippled along the sidewalk. Some onlookers averted their eyes, unwilling to bear witness to the abuse of power, while others stared in silent disbelief, their faces etched with concern. In that charged moment, the air seemed to thicken as the scent of gasoline from nearby idling cars mingled with the faint aroma of fresh coffee and the occasional waft of urban exhaust. The rhythmic clacking of Ronda's sneakers on the asphalt intensified with each step, underscoring her rising tension. Every detail, the crisp patter of her shoes, the low murmur of the crowd, and the arrogant smirks playing on the officer's lips, seemed to herald an imminent confrontation. Then, in an instant, the calm that had once enveloped her shattered. Ronda's eyes, warm moments before with the hint of a peaceful routine, now ignited with a fierce, unyielding fire of anger. In that split second, her expression transformed from serene determination to blazing fury. The air around her seemed to charge with the silent promise of retribution, the promise that she was not to be trifled with, not in this quiet Los Angeles morning, and certainly not under the scrutiny of those who had dared exploit her vulnerability. As the taunting laughter of Becker and Shaw mingled with the gasps of the gathered witnesses, each second stretched into an eternity. The tension was palpable, a thick, electrified silence that enveloped the scene. Ronda's eyes locked on the leering figures before her, and in that moment, everything changed. Her jaw tightened, her fists clenched unconsciously at her sides, and the serene warrior within her prepared to rise. A force that would soon challenge the very notion of abuse of power. In a heartbeat, Ronda's simmering fury exploded into action. Without uttering a single word, she took a fluid, almost balletic stride toward Officer Becker. In those crucial seconds, every lesson from her grueling training came to life. As Becker's intrusive hand clutched at her skirt, Ronda intercepted it with a swift, decisive grip. With a practiced precision honed from years in the ring, she twisted his wrist into a painful jiu-jitsu lock. In one seamless motion, her body flowed into a perfectly executed takedown. Becker's face contorted in shock and agony as he was lifted off balance and hurled onto the scorching asphalt. His cry, muffled by the sudden impact, barely registered over the rising crescendo of gasps from the surrounding onlookers. Before anyone had time to process the fall of Officer Becker, Officer Shaw lunged forward, driven by a frantic mix of anger and a desire to salvage the degrading moment. But Ronda was already several moves ahead, her eyes ablaze with a controlled, relentless determination. In one precise, almost choreographed motion, she sidestepped Shaw's aggressive charge. With a twist of her hips and a calculated shift of her weight, she diverted his momentum effortlessly. Shaw, caught off guard by her swift evasion, staggered and then crashed down beside his partner in a graceless sprawl, his impact echoing sharply on the pavement. The entire brutal sequence unfolded in a flash, no more than 10 seconds of pure, unyielding action that seemed to stretch into slow motion in the minds of those watching. Every movement was defined by a mix of raw power and unequivocal skill, the unmistakable aura of a fighter who refused to be trifled with. As Becker and Shaw lay stunned and incapacitated on the hot Los Angeles asphalt, the stunned silence was punctured by the rapid clatter of sneakers echoing off the concrete. The crowd that had gathered just moments earlier roused into a frenzy. Phones were whipped out in an instant, capturing every detail from high-definition angles. Faces in the onlookers transformed from shock to admiration as the video began to circulate among the crowd. A visual testimony to Ronda's fierce reprisal. The video, its clarity testament to multiple recordings, rapidly began its viral journey across social media platforms. Every share and like became a rallying cry against the abuse of power, each view a confirmation that such conduct would no longer be tolerated. Amid the tumult, as echoes of the chaos reverberated, Officer Becker managed to croak through the haze of pain, his voice ragged with a mix of fury and humiliation. "You will pay for this!" His desperate shout pierced the air, immediately followed by him scrambling to call for backup. The crude threat hung in the charged atmosphere, and for a brief, breathless moment, the situation teetered dangerously on the edge of further escalation. But Ronda's demeanor remained unshaken. With a calm that contrasted sharply against the chaotic scene unfolding behind her, she slowly reached into her purse and pulled out her phone. The cool glow of the screen illuminated her determined features. Her hand, steady and resolute, dialed a number with the precision of someone who knew exactly what was at stake. The crowd's murmurs subsided into a tense silence as she spoke quietly, her tone echoing the certainty of impending justice. "Emily, I need you now." In that moment, as the viral video captured every angle and the murmuring crowd hung on her every move, Ronda Rousey epitomized a force of sheer will, fierce, fair, and utterly unyielding. The relentless hum of the city, the distant roar of traffic, and even the rustle of palm fronds overhead all bore witness to a single truth. When you harness your strength with purpose, no act of disrespect can go unanswered. Within 20 minutes of Ronda's quiet yet resolute phone call, a sleek black sedan pulled up beside the swirling chaos on the busy Los Angeles sidewalk. Out stepped Emily Carter, a renowned attorney with a reputation for tenacity and an unwavering commitment to justice. Dressed in a tailored navy suit that balanced professionalism with authority, Emily's cool demeanor starkly contrasted the raw emotion simmering on the pavement. Flanked by 3 equally sharp legal advisors, she strode purposefully toward the scene, her eyes scanning the gathered onlookers and the injured silhouettes of Officers Becker and Shaw sprawled on the asphalt. As Emily navigated through the cluster of bystanders, the tension in the air thickened further. The murmurs of the crowd, now amplified by the rapid circulation of video footage on smartphones, melded with the distant wail of sirens approaching in answer to Becker's frantic call for reinforcements. The sound of police radios crackled in the background, and within moments, several additional patrol units began to converge on the scene. Officers in fresh uniforms hurried over, their faces a mix of confusion, urgency, and a dawning realization that the situation was spiraling far beyond a mere prank gone wrong. Officer Becker, still seething from his humiliation and pain, barked out as his voice echoed along the street. "You'll pay for this, Rosie!" His words were laced with indignation and a desperate assertion of authority, attempting, inevitably unsuccessfully, to reclaim control of the unfolding spectacle. Amid this clamor, Officer Shaw, attempting to rise and regain composure, glanced nervously at his colleagues, and it was evident that the impromptu call for backup had stirred a ripple of internal panic. In the background, the revving engines of arriving cruisers punctuated the air, signaling that the department was mobilizing a force to counter what was quickly being recognized as far more than a spontaneous skirmish. Emily Carter took it all in stride as she approached a cluster of police officers with a calm, measured tone. "Officers, I understand the situation has escalated, but I must insist that you secure the scene and preserve all evidence," she said, addressing not only the officers on the ground but also the newly arrived reinforcements. Her voice, firm and authoritative, cut through the raucous murmurs and uncertain shouts of the uniformed personnel. "This isn't just a physical altercation. It's a serious incident of harassment and abuse of power, and we will be pursuing every legal remedy available." Some officers exchanged uncertain glances as Emily continued, her tone brooking no argument. "Please, ensure that all witnesses are identified and that your body cameras and dash cams are active. We need to document every detail, every sound, every expression, to guarantee that justice is served." Her words resonated like a clarion call amid the rising din of policemen coordinating among themselves and locking down the area. Behind her, Ronda stood tall, her eyes still burning with determination as she surveyed the freshly arrived reinforcements, knowing that the tide of events had begun to shift. As the legal team positioned themselves near the perimeter, the flashing blue and red lights of patrol cars bathed the perimeter in intermittent bursts. The officers who had dared to degrade Ronda earlier were now encircled by their peers, some wearing remorseful expressions, others maintaining a sterile indifference born of bureaucratic routine. In the unfolding frenzy, whispers of accountability and justice began to ripple through the crowd. "She stood up for herself, and no one is above the law." Yet for Emily Carter and her team, the moment was not yet complete. They exchanged terse, focused looks as they began collecting preliminary statements from nearby witnesses and confirming the positions of body cams and surveillance devices. The legal professionals moved methodically, their every gesture a blend of precision and urgency. Within this orchestrated scene, the officer's earlier bravado was now overshadowed by a mounting awareness that the evidence, painstakingly gathered from multiple angles, would soon be irrefutable. As the reinforcements secured the area and the first hints of an official investigation coalesced in whispered orders and subdued nods, Emily's team prepared to compile their preliminary documentation. The electric anticipation in the air was nearly tangible, a charged silence that preluded the forthcoming unveiling of a damning body of evidence. In that suspended moment, it was clear that the scales of justice were about to tip decisively in favor of Ronda Rousey. Emily Carter took a steady breath and raised her tablet so that everyone within earshot could see. With a few deliberate taps, a high-definition video began to play on the screen mounted to a portable projector she had set up right at the scene. The footage, captured from multiple angles by nearby surveillance cameras and several smartphones, showed, in stark detail, the moment Officer Troy Becker had leered at Ronda Rousey and callously reached out to lift her skirt. Every detail was there. The lewd smirk on Becker's face, Officer Logan Shaw's mocking laughter, and the unmistakable expression of shock and fury that had ignited in Ronda's eyes. "Ladies and gentlemen," Carter announced sharply, her voice resonating with quiet authority over the sudden hush that fell upon the onlookers. "What you're witnessing is indisputable evidence of harassment and abuse of power. This incident wasn't just a rude joke. It was a blatant violation of Ronda Rousey's dignity." As the video rolled, Carter highlighted segments wherein the audio captured Becker's crude command, "Show us your legs," which had echoed across the busy sidewalk, and then the rapid sequence when Ronda, with her fighter's precision, swiftly turned the tables. Her calculated jiu-jitsu move was repeated in slow motion on the screen, underscoring the speed and skill with which she had incapacitated both officers. Alongside the visual evidence, Carter produced a meticulously prepared dossier. She slid a leather-bound folder toward the assembled police officers and gathered witnesses. Inside were copies of internal affairs reports, previous complaints lodged against Officers Becker and Shaw, and detailed accounts from multiple bystanders who had witnessed similar misconduct in past incidents. These documents, Carter continued, reveal a pattern, a history of harassment, abuse, and repeated neglect of duty on the part of these officers. No one is above accountability, and these records prove that this behavior is not isolated. Her measured tone left no doubt. The authorities would not tolerate the abuse of power any longer. At that very moment, the commanding officer overseeing the scene, already unsettled by the mounting evidence, stepped forward. His face, etched with a mix of regret and resolve, betrayed his acknowledgement of the undeniable facts laid out before him. "I have reviewed this evidence with my team," he said haltingly, "and under our department's protocols, and in deference to the clear violations documented, I am authorizing the immediate arrest of Officers Becker and Shaw." Before any of them could speak a further word, additional patrol units, which had already begun to encircle the scene, swiftly moved in. Uniformed officers approached Becker and Shaw with professional efficiency. The metallic sound of handcuffs clicking shut was punctuated by terse orders to step aside. The two officers, whose earlier confidence now dissolved into a mix of shock and humiliation, were led away amid a tense swirl of murmurs from their colleagues, whose expressions shifted from indifference to concern. As the arrest unfolded, the energy in the crowd exploded. The bystanders, who had earlier recorded the incident and now witnessed the tangible outcome of justice in real time, began collectively cheering. The once muted murmurs transformed into enthusiastic chants. "Ronda! Ronda! Ronda!" that reverberated off the concrete and glass of surrounding buildings. Faces lit up with vindication, and smartphones flashed as the historic moment was captured from every possible angle. Social media feeds sprang to life almost instantly, the viral video of Ronda's swift defense spreading like wildfire, igniting an outpouring of solidarity and outrage against abuse of power. Emily Carter, her eyes unwavering and filled with determined compassion, surveyed the scene. "This is a turning point," she declared to the gathered crowd, her voice both firm and empathetic. "Let this powerful evidence remind us that disrespect, harassment, and abuse will always be met with swift justice. No one, no matter their position, is exempt from the rule of law." Her words resonated deeply with the community, solidifying the sentiment that those entrusted with power must always be held responsible for their actions. Even as the arrested officers were being processed and the evidence was carefully secured for further legal proceedings, the palpable energy of the moment seemed to linger in the Los Angeles air. The warm breeze that had carried the scents of fresh coffee and urban hustle now mingled with the triumphant cries and clapping of hands, a spontaneous outpouring of a community united by their demand for respect and accountability. In that electrifying atmosphere, with justice visibly served and a new narrative beginning to take shape, the echoes of the crowd's chants filled the bustling street. The spirit of resilience embodied by Ronda Rousey, combined with the unwavering resolve of Emily Carter and her dedicated legal team, assured every witness that abuse of power would no longer be tolerated. The sound of "Ronda! Ronda! Ronda!" ushered in a promise that even in a city as sprawling and complex as Los Angeles, truth and justice were forces impossible to suppress. In a packed Los Angeles courtroom bathed in soft daylight filtering through tall arched windows, the atmosphere was heavy with anticipation and the collective desire for accountability. The once lewd actions of officers Troy Becker and Logan Shaw had been laid bare by irrefutable video evidence, witness testimonies, and loaded internal reports. Judge Miranda Ellis, a woman known for her unwavering fairness and steely resolve, presided over the case with a determined gaze. Every detail from that fateful day, echoing through the courtroom, reminded everyone present of the dignity that had been so brazenly assaulted. As the prosecution delivered its closing arguments, a palpable tension filled the air. Emily Carter, standing confidently at the prosecution's bench, detailed the pattern of misconduct, emphasizing that this was not an isolated incident, but a stark demonstration of systemic abuse within the department. A hush descended over the courtroom as she stated, "These officers abused not only their power, but they trampled on the fundamental rights of every individual they encountered. They must now face the full might of the law." Her voice, clear and resolute, resonated with the moral weight of justice long delayed. Judge Ellis took a measured pause before delivering her verdict. "After careful consideration of all the evidence presented and the testimonies of those who have suffered at the hands of authority, I find that the actions of officers Becker and Shaw constitute clear violations of both ethical conduct and the law." A murmur of approval swept through the courtroom as the judge continued, "I hereby sentence Officer Troy Becker to 18 months in jail and impose a fine of $100,000, and Officer Logan Shaw to 12 months in jail with a fine of $80,000. Furthermore, both officers are permanently barred from resuming any law enforcement duties." The pronouncement reverberated through the room, affirming the community's demand that abuses of power would no longer be swept under the rug. Outside the courtroom, the news exploded across social media and nightly newscasts. The verdict was hailed as a watershed moment, a statement that misconduct, no matter how lofty the badge, would be met with decisive justice. However, for Ronda Rousey, the battle she had waged was only one chapter in a much larger narrative. While law enforcement officials reeled from the sentencing, Ronda felt a surge of purpose emanating deep within her. Later that day, in a modest press room set up at a community center near downtown Los Angeles, Ronda addressed the gathered press. Against a backdrop emblazoned with bold letters reading "Fight Back," she spoke with the calm assurance of a warrior who had just defended her honor. "Today, we witness that no matter who wields power, nobody is above accountability," she said, her voice resonating with equal parts compassion and steel. "This is not merely a victory for me. It is a victory for every woman who has ever been demeaned, harassed, or silenced. We must stand together, not only to defend ourselves, but to ensure that our voices ripple outwards until every instance of injustice is met with unwavering resistance." Ronda formally announced the launch of her campaign, aptly titled "Fight Back." The initiative sought to empower women who had endured humiliation and harassment throughout their lives. With provisions for self-defense classes, legal aid advice, and community workshops, the campaign was designed to ensure that no one would ever again feel powerless in the face of abuse. Ronda explained further, "We are not here to incite violence but to foster strength, resilience, and the courage to demand respect. When you stand up for your dignity, you send a message to the world that your worth is not measured by a fleeting, demeaning act, but by the strength of your spirit." Images of Ronda speaking at the podium, her eyes emboldened by the day's victory, flooded news channels and social media feeds, each frame amplifying a message of justice, empowerment, and renewal. At community centers and gyms across Los Angeles, self-defense workshops under the "Fight Back" banner began to sprout, and thousands reached out to volunteer, share their stories, and join the growing movement. Among the press, Emily Carter noted, "This case sets a precedent. It reminds us that the law is a tool for all, not just for those in positions of power." Ronda's campaign is a rallying cry to all who have been disrespected and overlooked. As the campaign's hashtag trended nationwide, local activists and everyday citizens alike declared that it was time for a new era, a time when respect and dignity would be reclaimed by those who had long been marginalized. Back in the quiet of her temporary office, Ronda reflected on the day's events. Despite the physical and emotional scars that the incident had inflicted, she felt a renewed sense of strength. Strength isn't just about muscles, she mused inwardly. It's about using what you have, your skills, your voice, your resolve, to protect what matters most. And today, we've proven that a single act of defiance can set in motion a change that resonates far beyond one moment in time. As the courthouse steps filled with jubilant supporters and news vans, the seeds of transformation were sown. The case had rattled the system, forcing the LAPD to reconsider its policies and igniting discussions on the respect and rights owed to every individual. In this climate of change, Ronda's Fight Back campaign was poised to become a beacon for women everywhere. A clarion call that reminded the world that power, when wielded responsibly, is a tool for justice. In the weeks following the landmark trial, Los Angeles itself began to feel the reverberations of change. The scandal, amplified by the viral footage and the impassioned Fight Back campaign spearheaded by Ronda Rousey, forced the LAPD to confront a long-ignored truth. A series of internal investigations and departmental reviews were launched, and sweeping reforms were set in motion. The department's leadership issued a public apology and vowed to overhaul its policies, introducing mandatory training on respect, diversity, and proper conduct, as well as stricter oversight over police behavior. New protocols were established, and disciplinary measures turned uncompromising, sending a resounding message that abuse of power would no longer be tolerated. Within the corridors of the LAPD headquarters, a palpable shift in atmosphere could be felt. Once echoing with a culture of entitlement and silence, the offices and briefing rooms now buzzed with discussions about accountability and empathy. Senior officials held town hall meetings with officers, urging candid reflections on past missteps and outlining a clear roadmap for reform. The reforms were not simply superficial. They were designed to reshape a century-old culture. Officers underwent rigorous retraining, and an independent oversight board was created to ensure transparency in investigations of misconduct. Every badge now carried not only the authority to enforce the law but also a solemn responsibility to uphold dignity, an ethic that was reinforced by mandatory sensitivity workshops that featured voices from all corners of the community. As the LAPD began its arduous journey of transformation, Ronda Rousey's Fight Back campaign grew into a worldwide beacon of empowerment. News outlets from across the globe showcased inspiring clips of her confrontation, while social media exploded with hashtags like #FightBack, #RondaInspires, and #NoMoreHarassment. Women from all walks of life, athletes, entrepreneurs, educators, and everyday citizens, found courage in her story and began sharing their own experiences of standing up to injustice. Community centers, gyms, and universities hosted events and self-defense workshops under the Fight Back banner, with Ronda making surprise appearances to share her message of strength and resilience. Her campaign soon partnered with influential organizations, amplifying its reach far beyond the borders of Los Angeles, igniting hope in countless hearts that dignity was a right, not a privilege. In a plush television studio later that month, Ronda sat down with a renowned late-night anchor for an exclusive interview. The studio lights softened her features as she spoke with quiet, measured intensity about the responsibility of wielding power and the importance of self-respect. Sometimes, she confided, her eyes reflecting a lifetime of battles both inside and outside the cage, we forget that our true strength lies not in brute force, but in our ability to rise when we are knocked down. This isn't about revenge. It's about reclaiming our dignity and ensuring that every woman feels empowered to defend herself. Her words, broadcast to millions, resonated deeply with viewers who had felt voiceless amid a culture of indifference. Clips of that interview circulated rapidly online, further fueling the movement and drawing praise from activists, celebrities, and everyday citizens alike. Beyond the media spotlight, Ronda continued to work tirelessly behind the scenes. She organized community forums, collaborated with legal experts to offer free consultations for victims of harassment, and even mentored young women interested in martial arts and self-defense. Every step she took transformed not only her own life but also the communities she touched. The petals of a movement that began with a single, defiant act had unfurled into a global symbol of resistance against abuse and discrimination. Local organizations held rallies, marched, and demanded change, and soon, the story of the fighter who punished the cops became an emblem of hope and progress. One crisp evening, as the Los Angeles skyline shimmered in the twilight and palm trees swayed gently in the warm breeze, Ronda stood on a quiet rooftop overlooking the city. The soft hum of traffic and the distant murmur of city life underscored her reflective solitude. In that moment, she felt the weight of every soul who had been hurt and every voice that had long been silenced. With a determined smile that spoke of battles won and those yet to come, she allowed herself a moment of introspection. Today, she thought, we have made it clear that no one can take our dignity for granted. Change is not given. It is earned, fought for, and defended with every fiber of our being. Looking out over the vast urban landscape, Ronda's heart swelled with the knowledge that her defiant act had sparked a revolution of compassion and justice. A revolution that would continue to inspire for generations to come. In that unspoken promise carried on the Los Angeles breeze, as the world slowly began to evolve towards a future where every human being was treated with respect, she quietly affirmed her life's truth. Strength is not in your muscles, but in how you use it. I hope you enjoyed this story. Leave a comment, sharing your thoughts about it. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new and equally exciting stories. See you in the next video.